Welcome to American Dreams, Keys to Success, with your host, Alan Olsen. He's a Bay Area native. He's a successful businessman, well-connected, and a friend to all. He's been published and quoted in various media outlets, and he's been honored for his philanthropic contributions.
Ain't that America, home of the free, yeah. Little pink houses for you.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olsen.
Welcome to today's show. This is Alan Olsen.
And this is Nadine Camara.
Hey, Nadine, we have a really great show today. We're going to be talking about the New Hampshire caucus and their outcome. And then we'll talk about the presidential candidates, tax plans. We'll look at tax strategies for 2012. And then we're going to go and we're going to talk about some of the things that you should be aware of when getting ready to put your 2011 returns into the mail.
Well, I'm excited to hear about all of this information, especially that tax strategy, because, you know, for me, taxes are like going to the dentist. So I'm sure you're going to have a great wealth of information to share.
Do you enjoy going to the dentist?
No, I don't.
I have yet to meet anybody really excited about getting those tax checks into the mail.
Yeah, it's amazing. A whole year has passed. Whenever tax season comes, I can't believe another year is gone. So it really is. It seems like you just finished one and another one's coming.
That's certainly the truth. Well, let's get into the New Hampshire primaries. What happened here? So Tuesday, I guess Romney pulled it off.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Because the news at the end, the news was reporting that 40 to 60% of New Hampshire residents were still undecided. And that, you know, New Hampshire has been precedent with swinging against what Iowa votes and coming up with a completely different candidate. So it was very impressive what Romney was able to pull off there.
So, well, it's exciting. Looks like there's some momentum going in there, and the field is starting to narrow the candidates down. So it was, Romney and then Paul and Huntsman. Which was interesting.
Well, Huntsman did a lot of door-to-door type of politicking in New Hampshire. My surprise is Ron Paul, although maybe not for New Hampshire. I think Ron Paul, his foreign policy strategies are a little isolationist, and but then New Hampshireans have always been a little more libertarian thinking.
Well, it'll be interesting to see as we move onward and upward down to South Carolina. That's the next one scheduled coming up for this January 21st.
So what do you think, Alan? How close is Mr. Mitt Romney, or Governor Romney? How close do you think he is to winning the primaries?
Look, the race is continuing to go on. There's certainly a battle, a seesaw back and forth. It's not over yet. I think what's going to be expected is that, as is the case may be, when the front runner is out there, that everyone is going to be looking at them, attacking him, not only from the other GOP members but also the Democrats. They're going to want to see certain candidates in place. Looking at the polls, it was interesting that should Romney pull off this election and get the nomination for the GOP, he will be neck and neck with Obama, which is interesting.
That is interesting. That means a lot of Democrats are watching, as well as independents. I think a lot of this might be an independent vote because personally I have many friends that are Democrat, and they're telling me they're not going to vote. They're just going to stay home. They have the policies, and they're fiscal conservatives, many of them, and they don't believe that President Obama is a fiscal conservative. And that's where they disagree with Obama's policies, and they're disenchanted. They're disenfranchised.
Well, even as it may be that even Romney admits that Obama is going to be a tough candidate when it comes down to this race. And philosophically, there are two ends of the field. But nevertheless, the GOP has not yet been decided. They're working hard to try and define differences there. And anyways, so South Carolina will be coming up this next week. It'll be interesting as that pulls out, and then upward and onward to Florida.
Well, Romney is ahead in the polls, not by much, And it could change in South Carolina as millions of dollars is being poured into ads there, negative ads against him. But he is ahead in South Carolina, which I find interesting because I find them to be more socially conservative. I also find it interesting in the type of ads, the type of attacks that are coming against him. They're attacking him for being a capitalist. And those kind of attacks I would expect from Obama and Democrats. And yet Rick Perry came out calling him a vulture capitalist, implying that he's a venture capitalist, but actually it's private capital, and there is a big difference between private and venture capital. But it'll be an interesting race to see what happens in South Carolina. If he wins there, Alan, what do you think? Do you think he'll have the nomination wrapped up?
Well, I think he gets to South Carolina. I think by the time they get to Florida, if he takes Florida too, I think it'll be pretty clear the direction things are going. They have two more primaries to make it through, and I don't think it's really something that it's anybody's call right now. There's enough delegates in those other states that this thing could swing either way, and then it'll be beyond Florida if that happens, and they got to continue on until they finally get a winner out of these primaries here.
That's true. I believe even if he doesn't win South Carolina, if he could win Florida, it could be very positive for him. What about his running mate? I had just read recently, the talk is in the air, that Marco Rubio might be endorsing him. Have you heard anything like this?
Oh, I haven't heard anything yet. I'm not sure that Mitt has publicly announced who his running mate would be. It's really so early in this. I mean, he's only gone through 2 primaries, and this is really anyone's game still. In spite of what the polls can say, as we've seen, Newt Gingrich was in the lead in early December, and how quickly that can change. And so I think that we have to continue to watch this play it out, study what the issues are, and make sure that people are voting for the best candidate out there.
Well, what do you think people like about Romney?
That's interesting. As you hear all the clutter in the air about the negativity, you get positive, negatives, and for various reasons, he's pulling out ahead among the other candidates. And I believe, this is my personal opinion, that it stands a lot on his character. A lot of people, when they study into Mitt Romney, they'll find out there's a tremendous amount of leadership. A lot of people don't realize that this is an individual that simultaneously was obtaining 2 degrees at Harvard. He was in the business school and he was in the law school. And while he was attending both schools at once, he came in first place, or had the top honor out of the law school, #1 graduate. This guy's a bright guy. But the other thing, there was a individual here. His name is Thomas Stemberg, and he was the founder of Staples, and he went to Bain Capital in need of money, and he contacted Romney and said, I'd like you to invest some money into this company that I'm starting up. And Romney went out and did his own research and found out that this guy was right, that that there was a huge demand for office supply stores, and he started a company. Help Staples to launch by giving $600,000 of Bain Capital money. And today, Staple employs over 70,000 people. And so when we talk about Romney, he's been there. He's been in the trenches. He holds himself out as a capitalist in the private enterprise. But there's also another aspect of capital. In the capitalist area, I also like to mention he did Domino's Pizza with Bain Capital, Fun at Sealy, Brookstone, Sports Authority, created jobs for literally millions of people. So when he's out there on the campaign trail saying, I know how to create jobs, he brings it with credibility of what he's been able to do in the past. But there's another side of Romney that also has this leadership aspect. There was recently a story about, this is several years ago, and actually we're getting close to the break. I'd like to hold this story up until the break. This is Alan Olson's American Dreams. We'll be right back after these messages.
Protecting your family's health and welfare is a sacred trust. At Greenstein Rogoff Olsen Company, we know that sound financial planning will protect them now and in the future. We're certified public accountants with tax services for the highly successful and voted best CPA firm in the USA.
Greenstein Rogoff Olsen Company will help you manage your financial affairs so you can focus on what's really important in life.
Groco helping you along the way. Ain't that America, home of the free? Yeah. Little pink houses for you.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olsen.
Welcome back. This is Alan Olsen's America Dreams, and Nadine, we were having a discussion before the break on a story about Mitt Romney. That your question was, why do people like him? And I can't tell you why the tremendous momentum, but I want to point out a part of his character that demonstrates leadership. This is back in 1996, and this is when Mitt was with Bain Capital. There was another partner of Bain. His name was Bob Gay, Robert Gay, and he had a 14-year-old daughter that turned up missing. She had gone out and attended a rave party, and basically had become high in ecstasy. Nobody knew where she was.
Right. I think at that time when she was missing, he didn't know where she was. They found out subsequently that she was at a rave party and took ecstasy. But I think that he just came to work one day and is just beside himself. His daughter was missing and they didn't know where she was.
So Romney went down to New York City, where Bob Gay was living, and he took immediate action. He closed down the entire firm and asked all 30 partners of Bain Capital and employees to fly into New York City to find Gay's daughters. So Romney set up a command center at LaGuardia Marriott. He hired a private detective to assist with the search. He established toll-free numbers for tips, coordinating efforts with the New York City police. Romney enlisted employees of Bain Capital's accounting firm and its law firm in New York to put up posters with a photo of the missing teenager. Cashiers at Duane Reade's pharmacies owned by Bain Capital stashed flyers with their photo into every shopper's bag. Romney and others from Bain Capital trudged through Manhattan, even scouring Central Park, and talked with everyone they could, prostitutes, drug addicts, to try and develop leads. The hunt made the evening news, and it ran photos of the girl and a video of the investment banker's type prowling through Central Park in three-piece suits. The next day, a teenage boy she was with phoned in and asked if there was a reward. The boy got nervous and quickly hung up, but the police traced the call to a home in Montville Township in New Jersey. When they found her in the basement of that home, Bob Gay's daughter was shivering through detox after a massive dose of ecstasy. His daughter probably would not have lasted another day, the doctors told him. The fact is this, that Romney saved the young girl's life, but you will not see that story listed in the mainstream media. Instead, what people are focusing on is things that probably are not as relevant as the true character that he holds and the leadership that he has. And so that answers my.
Yes, I completely agree. I think the media is really ignoring. And the mainstream media wants to focus on the negative things that Bain Capital, the investments that went awry. Bain Capital was not a venture capital firm, but a private capital firm. And the difference is that they go in to businesses that are failing already and try to turn them around, or they start up businesses, give private money. Where you can't go to a bank and get it. They invest in you and get private money to make you succeed. And, of course, there's going to be businesses that fail. These businesses were already failing. So when you hear the sad stories of, he came in and they broke up our company, they sold it off, it was because it didn't turn around. And there's always going to be the investments that's going to have to do that. But there are so many more successes, as you've mentioned, Sealy, Sports Authority, Domino's, Staples, but that the media and then the character when they assassinate. What firm Do you know, would your boss, would your CEO close down your business and fly everybody to New York City and set up a command center to find your daughter if she didn't come home one night? And set up everybody, that the accounting firm and other businesses that company owned, and have everybody involved in putting up flyers and scouring New York City for your daughter? That tells a lot about his character.
All right, well, let's move on.
Okay, you're going to tell us something about some taxes now, huh? Some tax legislation, or what's going on in Congress right now?
Well, I think nothing. Yeah, absolutely nothing. And every time they try, nothing goes on. And I think they pretty much have decided not to do anything during this election year. That's my prediction. But they have. The two candidates out there, Obama is pretty much in place for the Democrat side, and then the GOP is trying to decide where they want to go. But of the candidates, Romney has thrown his plan out there. Should he be elected, this is what he would like to do. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It's almost the polar opposite of what Obama is focused in on. So when you look at the Romney plan, and we'll compare this with Obama's in a minute. Romney has proposed a permanent plan to extend the 2001 through 2003 Bush-era tax cuts. That basically is a 15% capital gain rate, 15% dividend rate, basically maintaining those lower rates in place. And
you know what, Alan? Yeah. I want to say something because I watch on various news stations. And over, media says the Bush-era tax cuts are for the rich. Well, a lot of Californians don't know we are the rich because our, lower income is in the 40,000s. And Bush-era tax cuts, if you earn $40,000 a year, you're going to be, if those tax cuts go away, you're going to be nailed with quite a bit of taxes increased. So they try to gloss over, that's just for the rich, that's for the rich. It's for a lot of middle-income America.
All right. Well, and again, I think both candidates are addressing that they want to make sure that they're not raising rates. Even Obama, if you're less than $250,000, he wants to make sure that rates aren't being raised there. But let's go on. So basically, you have the elimination of tax on a lot of the investment income for individuals under the Romney plan. Also, one thing he's proposing is the reduction of the corporate tax rates from a 35% rate to a 25% rate, which is basically going to allow more cash to reach into the coffers of America. And as people have more cash in the economy, they can spend those dollars at the grocery stores or for the consumer goods.
Won't it bring more companies back to America and repatriate some of that cash too? In other words,
could do that too.
When we make it easier for corporations to conduct business, then they're going to have more capital to invest into their corporation and hire more people. I think the idea of reduction of corporate tax is to stimulate job growth.
Understood, and it will make us more competitive globally. If you have other countries that have much lower tax rates or that they're subsidizing the businesses, and that we have to stay competitive in this world. So the other thing that Romney's plan is proposing is the elimination of the estate tax and the repeal of the 2010 health reform legislation.
That's Obamacare.
Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
So, the flip side, we just have a couple minutes here. Obama's 2002 budget, basically, he has proposed that he's just going to let the Bush tax cuts expire at the end of 2012. If nothing happens, the rate's going to go back up to 20% for the capital gains, and for the most part, it's a status quo plan. Although he wants to protect the individuals making $250,000 or less to make sure that those Bush tax cuts or that the lower rates will stay in effect. So there's going to be a focus on the high net worth individuals.
Okay, so his tax plan will not allow people in middle income America to suffer those increases from the Bush tax cuts?
I think they're looking at that right now, both individuals. And the reality is that the middle class is not where the tax dollars are really raised. It's through those rich. The top 5% of the wage earners, are individuals pay the majority of the tax in this country. So both plans are focused on that. So we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages. Nothing's more important than spending time with your family. At Greenstein Rogoff Olsen Company, we're trusted advisors to the highly successful. Our goal is to help you find the right strategy to protect your wealth for yourself and those you love. Kids! Why do I feel like I've just had an audit? As trusted advisors to the highly successful, we'll make sure you don't lose your shirt.
Ain't that America, home of the free? Yeah. Little pink houses for you. Oh, little baby, for you and me.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olsen.
Welcome back to American Dreams. We were talking prior to the break about tax cuts, the tax reform that both Obama and Romney were looking at in terms of their proposals and doing a comparison.
Speaking of taxes, Alan, do you have any tax strategies for 2012 that you could give to us?
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, so we're moving into 2011 tax returns now. Well, let's look at. Let's first start with the filing date. We've suddenly moved off the April 15th filing date, and the IRS has given us an extra, not 1, but 2 days to get those returns in. It's April 17th this year.
Oh, well, that's nice.
April 17th. So, this year what happened is April 15th falls on a Sunday. And in Washington, D.C., Monday, April 16th, is Emancipation Day. And since it's a federal holiday and the offices are closed, the IRS has moved the date for filing to April 17th, which is on a Tuesday this year.
Well, that's not too common, is it?
Well, last year they did the same thing. So it's interesting that for all the years that I've been doing taxes, the last couple of years we moved off the April 15th deadline. Of course, April 15th last year was on a Saturday, but the deadline has been moved to April 17th now.
Mm-hmm. Any other strategies or tips that you have?
This year the IRS will be accepting e-filed returns. Beginning next week as of January 17th. So if you're expecting a refund, you want to speed up those refund checks, make sure you e-file.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting as technology gets better. Of course, the advantage of e-filing is that they can deposit the check right directly into your bank account. And, a lot of people say, yeah, but then I'm going to tell them where my money is. Well, the reality is they already know. You're not telling them anything that you don't know. So it's just the reality is getting your money quicker and allowing you to use it is a good thing. And, I had the experience this last year. I got to tell you that having seen the other side of the fence, I got called into a client audit. A client said, "Well, you represent me in this IRS audit." So I went down, and the IRS agent says, "Well, can you bring a couple copies of the tax returns?" And I thought the request was a little unusual because they were asking for a copy of the year that they were auditing. And I used to work for the IRS years ago. And we would have a copy of the return given to us in advance, and it was a standard request to ask for the prior year and the subsequent year tax returns, but to ask for the tax return for the year that they're auditing, I thought was unusual. So I couldn't help but ask the IRS agent when we were sitting in the meeting. I said, "Why do you need this return?" And she said, "Well, this individual had e-filed their individual return, and there's no way we can tell what he deducted on the return." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We put it all in the forms and submitted it in." I said, "Well, our technology isn't really that good. On our form that we have, it just shows 2 lines. It shows the amount of income that he had off this business and the amount of expenses, but it does not itemize any expenses."
So it kind of set him up for for an audit. But
well, wait a minute. Not set them up. That's a filing strategy. If you have a Schedule C,
right,
file it. They're not going to know what you put on your expense. And it was hard for them to classify, but make sure whatever you put on there, by all means, is correct and that you have documentation. But it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to classify expenses in advance, on these e-file returns.
Interesting.
I think they'll get better as time goes on.
Oh, yes, because more and more CPAs are offering e-file.
Yeah. It's pretty standard. In our office, the majority of individuals, I say about 50 to 60% now e-file. It's because it's so much easier. The refund checks come back quicker, and it's just they're not standing in line at the post office box doing things for certified mail, and it's just it's a much smoother process. So.
Excellent. So what are some tax tips that can help people lower their taxes?
Well, let's look at this year. So we had a few changes, not much. A lot of it went under the radar. We had a couple provisions expiring in December 31st, 2011. That would be withdrawing from your IRA accounts, making the charitable deductions. That went out by the wayside, and few other things, but not much to speak of that was coming through. But I'd like to talk about when you're filing the return this year, make sure that you pay attention to tax credits. Tax credits are a dollar for dollar reduction in your income tax liability. So they have things like in the education field called the American Opportunity Credit. And this credit is a $2,500 credit per student that will be given for the first years of post-secondary education. And 40% of this credit can be refunded even though you pay no income tax at all.
Wow. So if you're going to post-secondary, meaning university or college, and it's the first 4 years while you're going, so it's for your 4-year degree, the student can get a complete credit and get 40% refund even though they paid no taxes.
The student, or if it's the parent funding it. Now, there's income limitations involved with that, but let's say that you got a young married couple, and because they haven't had the opportunity to really get out there and workforce, and they're living hand to mouth, they can put a return in the mail, and if they had no income tax liability, they can get a $1,000 check refunded even though they've never paid into the tax system.
So it's Merry Christmas from the government. That sounds very nice.
You also have the lifetime learning credit. That's up to $2,000. Part-time students can qualify for this. Make sure you look at the child care credits. So if you paid someone to care for your children under the age of 13 so you could work, you're entitled to up to $3,000 paid for one qualifying child, or $6,000 for two.
Or more, I would suppose. Is $6,000 the cap?
It's typically the limit there, but you also have other credits there. Moving on, that adoption credit. So if you went out and adopted a child, and you can deduct basically up to $13,170 in a credit for the expenses, qualified adoption expenses paid.
Oh, that's excellent.
And
that
then,
will really help encourage adoptions.
Absolutely. Those the families that do that is a huge financial burden. I'm glad to see that type of assistance in there. Then the other one in there is the child tax credit, and this is $1,000 for each qualified child under the age of 17 that you're claiming on your individual return.
Well, now the child tax credit, isn't that the same as your exemptions, or is that?
It's different. You get your exemptions. You get your exemption for the child, and then you get the special credit.
Ah, okay. So it's in addition to the exemptions that you take at the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh,
so there's limitations of income involved in these. So just be aware of it. Make sure you review what the rules are. But those credits are dollar for dollar. You want to make sure you take advantage of those if you can qualify for them.
Are there any other reductions available this
Absolutely. In 2011, you have 100% bonus depreciation. That's if you bought some type of equipment using your trade or business, furnitures and fixtures. You get the right 100% off the first year. And that's unlike the 179 deduction that's limited to the income of the business. You can have a loss that year, and you still get the full write-off in year number one.
So limited to the income, meaning that if your business didn't make any income, you won't be able to deduct 100%?
Well, and 179 has an income limitation. This bonus depreciation has no income limitation at all. So it's something different. You want to make sure that if you bought equipment last year, you're aware of what these rules are. We're running up against the break here, Nadine. I'll come right back after these messages, and we'll continue to discuss a few more strategies.
You're listening to American Dreams with Alan Olsen.
Even in times of financial uncertainty, GROCO has been recognized as an expert in the tax field.
People come to us when they need help managing their affairs. They want solid financial advice while lowering their tax burden. For over 40 years, GROCO has been a trusted advisor to many of Silicon Valley's most successful entrepreneurs when dealing with the IRS and state tax authorities. We can provide a level of personal attention you won't find at national CPA firms.
For your time and for your wealth, call GROCO today.
Ain't that America, home of the free, yeah. Little pretty houses for you. Oh, baby, for you and me.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olsen.
Welcome back to America Dreams. Before the break, we're talking about tax strategies for 2011 filings.
Yes, Ellen. What do you think is going to be happening this year for the 2011 taxes? What are your predictions?
Well, I'll tell you, the absence of congressional thinking last year, which they were able to not really bring any resolution to the table, means that not much different than the 2010 tax return filing season. So we're kind of moving through the 2011 into status quo. The IRS is still in the process of getting forms worked up, and they still got some adjustments to make in some of the categories there. But by Valentine's Day they should be up and running. The other thing that people need to continue to be aware of is the old monstrous alternative minimum tax. This is really a separate tax system within a regular tax system in which the IRS will not allow you to take certain deductions such as state and local taxes and reduce your marginal rate below a 28% rate. A lot of people, more and more people, if you're earning, around $250,000 or more, you're falling into this AMT trap.
Right.
And I have a great article on it on GROCO.com. If you're suffering from AMT, ways that you can think about AMT and getting out of the AMT trap, but more and more people are falling into that area. Also, speaking about state and local taxes, one of the things that expired at the end of 2011 is the deduction for sales tax. Now, in California, where we have a high income tax state, most California residents don't really care about the sales tax deduction. But if you lived in the state of Nevada or Wyoming or Florida and were subject to sales tax, you would care about that deduction on your individual tax return. Well, that went by the wayside, expiring December 31st, 2011. So no longer will that be allowed. One of the other big changes this next year in the 2011 returns, people are going to notice it, and it will give them a lot of grief, and that's the new form. It's called the 8949, and this basically is going to require individuals to complete this form to tell the IRS their tax basis in the stocks or business assets that were sold. And the IRS, point blank, is going to be asking them on this form, is the number that you're telling us for your cost basis being provided to you in a Form 1099-B? And the individuals will basically be giving the IRS a roadmap for how they're coming up with their numbers for documenting the tax basis.
Now that could be quite confusing because I know that some, you're talking about what the cost is for purchase of stocks when they purchase stocks or bonds or investments on the stock market. And some companies do not keep your cost basis and report it to you at the end of the year. Other companies do. And so sometimes this can be horrendous, especially if you're holding several shares of stock, correct?
This will be the number one trouble spot in filing your 2011 returns. I'm going to predict that right now. It's it's going to give individuals a lot of grief on, there's like 6 different categories that they need to fill out before they even get to Schedule D. And think about the individual who's owned a mutual fund for years and just decided to plow all these dividend reinvestments back into it. They need to now come up with
every single dividend reinvestment,
and account for what their tax basis is.
Oh, so that could be because I used to work for Merrill Lynch at one time, and what they do is they call us up and ask for cost basis all the time. The tax year, that's going to be a nightmare for those assistants and everybody working in these stock firms because that's who they'll go to. So that will be a nightmare for them. But dividend reinvestment, many people reinvest whatever the mutual fund makes right back into the mutual fund. So that could be a real nightmare.
I think it would be the number one trouble spot in the 2000 returns. Wow. And we're not going to hear about it until people actually open up their TurboTax or their individual returns and start to begin to prepare it. And then they're realizing what a burden that this form is actually going to create. Now, there's a couple interesting issues out there, and it didn't stop at the Schedule D and putting a new form in there, the Form 8949. I'd like to spend a little bit of time on this. Last year, Congress had passed legislation that basically said if you're a business owner filing a Schedule C or you own rental property and you are buying assets. So if you bought a computer, bought some type of furniture, fixtures, you spent some money, the IRS, would like you to file a 1099 for every vendor that you spent your dollars with. And a huge tax burden. People, when they begin to think about the amount that they would have to be going through to start filling out a 1099 for reporting this, they called up Congress and they said, "You got to be kidding!" It was part of the Health Reform Act of bill that they passed in 2010, and so Congress backed off the legislation. They said we're going to repeal this portion of it, and they sent it to President Obama, and it was on it was April, I think it was around April 17th or April 15th. Of last year, that Obama repealed this legislation for the 1099 reporting. Well, interestingly enough, the form writers at the IRS never changed the form. They decided we're just going to keep the form as is. And so when you begin to fill out your Schedule C or your Schedule E this year, you're going to see some new lines in it. And, I have a Schedule E right in front of me. And the first two questions off it on the top line is, A, did you make any payments in 2011 that would require you to file a Form 1099? And they want you to say yes or no. And then the second question is, if yes, did you or will you file all the required 1099s. So, interestingly enough, the IRS goes on to explain that these 1099s are not necessarily going to be imposed. The form designers put this in place.
Okay, so they're not going to require you to fill that out, or will you have to fill that out?
Well, it's interesting that there's a form here that they put out there that is not necessarily aligning with the current tax laws. So then you go down to 3A and 3B, and it says here merchant card and third-party payments for 2011. And they have this line, and they tell you just enter zero. They want you to put a zero. They said this serves no purpose. for us, but it's for future use.
So they're setting the stage for this law to actually be passed, to where if I, as a business owner, buy a new Macintosh laptop and a new desktop from Dell, I've got to give them a 1099 for my purchase?
Well, let me clarify this. I'm going to read you the instructions.
Oh,
because
no.
this gets better. This gets better. Okay. This is the IRS instructions. You can get this off of irs.gov, the instructions for Schedule E for the Form 1040. It says the following. It says, new merchant card reporting requirements. We added new lines 3A and 3B to implement reporting of gross receipts received by merchant cards. This is credit and debit cards and third-party network payments. However, for 2011, the IRS has deferred the requirement to report these amounts. Therefore, enter 0 on lines 3A and report all gross receipts on line 3B, including any income reported to you on Form 1099K, merchant card and third-party network payments. See instructions for line 3A and 3B.
So merchant card meaning your debit card. Would it also mean a credit card as well?
It's basically any payment that you received from a merchant card, or PayPal was the other thing coming in here. So
now, that's for payments received.
Yeah, my advice to you, look, this is getting more complicated, it's getting more confusing as you go through. Make sure that when you're looking at these that you call a competent tax advisor and go through these rules. One thing that you don't want to put on forms is that I know I have a requirement to file a 1099, but I'm not going to file it. Basically, you're saying, please come talk to me, audit me. The reality is, since they're asking the question, you better make sure that if you do have a 1099 filing requirement, that you are putting the right forms out there. Even though this change was passed into law this last year.
Wow, amazing! And obviously, this is just going to cost the average taxpayer, the average income earner, just so much more money, because it's more paperwork, and then they're going to have to pay their tax preparers more money to shuffle through all of this and get it prepared for them.
Well, it gets better. We just talked about Schedule E. I got Schedule C in front of me, and Schedule C basically says the same thing. Anyways, it's just basically the same thing you saw on Schedule E is there. You don't have to report all this stuff. We got to take a quick break. This is Alan Olson's American Dreams. We'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to American Dreams with Alan Olson.
Family. Protecting your family's health and welfare is a sacred trust. At Greenstein, Rogoff, Olsen and Co, we know that sound financial planning will protect them now and in the future. We're certified public accountants, so whether you need business services or individual wealth management, think GROCO, trusted financial advisors to clients around the Bay and beyond. Greenstein, Rogoff, Olsen and Company will help you manage your financial affairs so you can manage what's really important in life.
Ain't that America, home of the free, yeah. Little pink houses for you.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. Well, today we discussed several changes of the upcoming tax season, things that you need to be aware of.
Yes, Alan. What are the filing options for individuals who are preparing to file?
Well, they can file their own return, fill it out by hand. I've only really met one individual who still wants to do his return by hand. I think he had an electrical engineer, an advanced degree, graduated top of his class, and when he did it, he said, "I can do this. I get down to AMT, but I can make it through." And then he got into all these form filing requirements, and finally he threw up his hand and says, "I give up." He says, "This is too complicated." So, today the majority of individuals that have simple returns, they can do something by hand. A lot of individuals have gone into electronic filing programs like TurboTax. And then the third options that they have is going out and finding a paid preparer, paying someone to do this for them. So.
What do you think are some of the common mistakes that people that self-prepare their taxes do?
First of all, they're choosing the wrong filing status. A lot of individuals are checking boxes. They basically have options. If you're single, it's one tax rate. If you're married, filing joint, it's another tax rate. Married, filing separate, and then they have this head of household. So oftentimes people will get divorced, and they'll choose the filing status of head of household without really understanding the clear rules. And typically the FTB, anytime a person changes their filing status into the head of household, it's going to automatically generate a notice and a series of questions from them to make sure that they have it done right. So you want to make sure that you understand the correct filing status that you're using. There is a difference in tax rates. It does matter, but you want to make sure that before putting that form into the mail that you're clear about what the rules are. The other thing that individuals oftentimes will fail to do is use the correct forms or schedules. If a tax return is filed incomplete, the IRS is going to come back and ask for certain forms to be completed in order to get a correct return in. So make sure you understand what forms you need to file, the correct schedules, and also when you're looking at dependents, when you have two individuals that are supporting the same individuals, such as children in the case of a divorced couple, the IRS is requesting Social Security numbers of the children on the return. Well, when they see that two separate returns have claimed the same child, it'll generate a notice. And so you want to make sure that both spouses have, or ex-spouses have, an agreement of who's going to claim the deduction for the child. There are special rules that go around which parent is entitled to the deduction there.
So a parent can't decide, I'll deduct the child this year, you deduct the child next year. There are rules that they must follow.
I think as far as the IRS is concerned, if it's not getting double deducted, that's fine. But if it gets to the place where they're still having disputes on who's entitled to the deduction, is going to go back to what the divorce agreement said in the child custody. The custodial parent. And then the other thing often people fail to do is reconcile the 1099s to the W-2s. You'll get a trip to the IRS. It'll generate an IRS notice, and you'll need to be explaining that. So make sure that you have good reconciliation on the records. And the other thing that you want to make sure is making sure that you get your tax return in timely. I can't emphasize that more. A lot of people just say, well, I'll just file my return whenever I want to file it. And, the longer you move away from the deadline, you're setting yourself up for an IRS audit. They're going to be asking questions of what caused the delay. We want to talk to you. And so try to get things in on time.
Well, Alan, you've given some great strategies, some great tips today. We've learned a lot here today.
Thank you. I think the key to this whole thing is in getting your return done, be well organized. It never hurts to start early. And usually it pays great dividends in the end by being well organized prior to getting your return in.
Thanks for sharing that.
This is Alan Olson's America Dreams. Stay tuned and join us next week.
Discovering your keys to success. This is American Dreams on AM 1220 KDOW.
I watch the sun rise upon a new day. Each fragrant flower blooms with much to say. It's such moments sweet and pure when life's joys and charms endure. It's the small, simple things that bring love into my life. Feathered wing offers flight from the nest. A child's smile makes my heart feel blessed. It's such times when hope is near that sweet love relieves all fear. It's a small, simple thing